Hi, welcome to another episode of Meaningless, and we're going to be talking about shadow work or self introspection. Now, we hear these words a lot, particularly in the spiritual world. So, what is it? Shadow work is simply a spiritual wording or explanation for self introspection. And what is that? Well, it is a process, I think, of taking responsibility for the way that you see the world, your interactions, your traumas, and any and all emotional programs you have built in a survival mode mechanism of your life, part of your life, or from any sort of reactionary behavior. Now, doing this is not about taking blame for anything. This is not taking blame for traumas or terrible situations that you were in, because blame just puts us into the mindset that somebody did something wrong or it's somebody's fault. And for self introspection to be successful, we need to remove the desire to blame something or someone outside of ourselves. We just have to accept on some level that it is what it is. Now, if we accept that we are all having our own experiences of the world, and we can accept that the way we respond to those experiences is not entirely authentic, but it is from programs and past situations and behaviors that we have collected over our lifetime, then we can work through all of these ideas and we can understand why they exist. We can understand where they came from and what we can do now to understand. So let's look at an example that can be quite common. And that can be a good place to start because it is an emotion that does show itself quite a bit. And this is in regards to jealousy and envy in relationships. So while these may seem like they're the same thing, they are very different and they can tell us very different things about ourselves. So we need to get on the same page with some definitions first. And let's start with the definition for jealousy. Jealousy is an emotion attached to the belief that someone is trying to take something from you, to take what you have. And envy is an emotion attached to wanting something that someone else has. So, an example of being jealous in a relationship is when you think you might lose your partner to someone else. But being envious in that situation is maybe seeing your partner laughing with someone else and wanting to be able to have that moment with them. These emotions are very commonly overlooked as someone else's fault. You know, that girl talking to your boyfriend is making you jealous. The guy joking with your girlfriend is making you envious. In actual fact, we can't be made to feel these things. We choose that from one point in our psyche or another. But when we overlook these moments as a chance for us to ask our inner self some questions, we really miss a huge opportunity. Questions we need to be asking: why do I feel jealous? Why do I feel like someone could take something from me? Why am I not getting that in my relationship? This questioning process is self introspection, shadow work. It asks us to look at the meanings we repress from experiences, to look at these emotions, and it asks us where our responsibility lies. Self responsibility is a huge part of self introspection or shadow work, and we cannot do one without the other. So when we ask these questions, we need to know things like, why am I triggered to have that emotion? What triggered it? Where did that trigger start? When did I learn to respond like that? Does that trigger have a place in my reality? So let's look at an example using jealousy in a relationship. And perhaps you are out with your partner and another woman or man talks to your partner. Perhaps they're waiting at the bar for drinks. Now you experience this feeling of jealousy. How dare she talk to my man? But if we use a process of questioning that aids in self-introspection, we would perhaps find out some repressed shadows that are actually the real culprit of the jealousy. So we can ask questions like, why am I triggered to have this emotion? What triggered it? Do I feel like this woman could take my man from me? He seems very interested in what she's got to say. Where did that trigger start? Where did I learn to respond like that? Do I have low self-esteem, low self-worth and trust because maybe an ex cheated on me? Maybe my parents made me feel like I was not good enough to be loved, not worthy enough of love. Perhaps I had to perform some sort of love in order to get it from them. Do I have any unhealthy attachment styles and behaviors? I don't know what my partner really wants from me. I don't know if they want to be with me. I'm not sure my partner isn't looking for someone else. These are all things that can come up in this questioning process, and they are very important to think about. Maybe one of the things coming up is your partner has never validated your relationship as being monogamous, as you being the person they want to be with. Perhaps you are projecting your own feelings of not being happy in that relationship, and therefore you are seeing that through that filter. And then we have to ask, does that trigger have a place in my current reality? Because what happens when we are triggered into these emotions, they are always a call back from something that happened in the past. And we have to ask ourselves, does that trigger have a place in this reality? We can look at things like, has my partner given me any reason to not trust them? Do I need to protect myself from my partner the same way I had to protect myself from the things I lacked as a child? Do I fear being alone? Have I asked my partner to validate our relationship? Am I even happy in this relationship? Once we start questioning these negative emotions as they come up, we can really find out where they stem from. And once we can understand why we react that way, where it came from, how long we've been running with that rule structure, in time, we can really work on not responding from that place. And that is the benefit of self-introspection. And that is why we do shadow work. As is the name of this podcast, we do have to understand that every interaction we have is meaningless unless you want to give it a meaning. You can choose that. So while it is easier to blame the attractive woman for talking to your man, the only reason you're feeling jealous is because you think you may lose him to her. And that emotion is coming up for you to look at yourself, not at her, perhaps not even at him. To be fair, we have to validate that there are some circumstances where perhaps he has been dishonest with you. Perhaps he has given you every reason in the world to not trust him. But even with that outcome, there is still a level of responsibility that we need to take. This is where we get to talk about the B word, boundaries. This is where boundaries come in. Now, remember that setting boundaries is not just you telling someone else what to do. This is not saying you are not allowed to talk to women. That is not setting a boundary. Boundaries simply create a firm line in the sand that have a consequence so that the other person can be very sure of what their behavior will get them. Now, if your partner has given you no reason to distrust them, you need to really, truly understand where that jealousy came from. And that is going to take self-introspection. And you need to do that before you talk to him about it, before you set a boundary. Because perhaps it's just an insecurity you have from a past relationship. And in that case, you might want to tell him that. Explain your insecurity. Ask him to help you by maybe adhering to that boundary for a short period of time while you work on it. If you're in a healthy relationship, that shouldn't be a problem to talk about. And if you're in a healthy relationship and you can understand your emotional patterns and your triggers, then your man talking to another woman or your woman talking to another man, it shouldn't really make you jealous. Are you really worried you're going to lose them to somebody else? Because honestly, one, we can't control anybody else, and we don't own anyone. So if someone can steal your partner, they never really were yours, and they are making a choice to be with somebody else. And two, if he validates his feelings for you as his partner, who cares if he talks to another woman? You aren't going to lose him to her. Until we fully understand and accept things like we are a whole person on our own, we can be happy on our own, and what we have to give in a relationship is worthy of being loved. Until we understand those things, we will always project our insecurities or repress our truest selves through a fear of losing someone, of not being good enough, of not having love. Now, none of this is easy. Self-introspection, shadow work, it is not easy. It often involves looking at our childhood, our parenting, our friendships and lovers we've had that didn't work out, some that even did work out. And it means we have to remove blame from our instant reactions and be patient with ourselves as we go into these shadows, these things that we don't want to talk about or look at or take responsibility for. All emotional reactions are just a message for you about yourself. And self-introspection or shadow work is an opportunity to look at those things. The emotional reaction is just a key, a doorway, a light being shone on that thing that we need to look at, that we need to truly understand. And people often wonder if they have to wait for emotional situations, for an emotional reaction to come up to do self-introspection or shadow work. The simple answer is no. We do often experience that, and it leads us down a path of wanting to do the shadow work and self-introspection, but it does not have to work like that. There are many ways that we can make a habit of this, and one of them is by using a map of our psyche and a cyclical process that the universe provides us with to be continuously moving forward, continuously evolving patterns, relationships, goals, and doing self-introspection. So I want to talk to you about a basic Selenic cycle that you can use. This is a monthly cycle, and depending on how much focus you want, depending on whether you want to use your own map of your psyche or not, will depend how deeply you can focus on these things. So let's look at September. Now, September focus is about habits and health. So we would be looking at things like from the 1st until the 3rd of September, this is what is the beginning of the health and habits review. This is where we want to think about what we want to achieve over the next few months. So you could say, what am I going to achieve over the next 1 month? Perhaps even a bigger picture, 6 months. How do I want to feel at the end of that? What habits can I bring in daily to help me achieve that? We want to be looking at our health. We want to be looking at our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and asking ourselves, is my body, my mind, my spirit giving me signs that something is unbalanced? Have I been sick? Does my body hurt? Am I experiencing depression or loneliness? These are signs from your body that something is unbalanced. We want to be planting seeds during these few days as well. Write down what you want to achieve. And this can be as simple as simply writing, I want to be able to maintain a healthy eating plan. I want to maybe only snack 1 day a week. Or it can be something like, I want to increase my business by 5 customers a week. During this time, also I would suggest connecting with nature. We move on to the next part of this cycle, which is the relationships review. Because as humans, we are all affected by the relationships around us. And so during this health and habits review in September, we look at our relationships. We want to look at, are they balanced? How am I showing up in these relationships? And am I able to be myself in them? Do any of my relationships hold me back or have the capacity to hold me back from the goals that I just set? Remember those 1 month or 6 monthly goals and look at those relationships. Really look at them. Look at the emotions related to your goals, habits, relationships, and ask yourself questions about where they came from, why you get triggered, those sorts of questions. Also, during this time, make time to be social as well as making time for solitude. Then we get to the midpoint check-in of the cycle. This is where you want to look at how you have committed to your actions, decisions, and plans that you made at the beginning of the month. What did you learn on that journey so far? And really think outside the box for new ideas on how to take action. Ask other people, be curious about the way that they would do it. You don't have to agree to do it their way, but having an idea of how other people think outside the box can be really helpful. Also, during this time, try something exciting, rebellious, or challenging to your own rule structure. It can help us think outside the box. It can also bring up emotions that we need to then look through and question. Perhaps you have a fear of change, and this is what you'll find in that little bit of an introspection. The next part of that monthly cycle is the revise and feel. So this is where you would be revising, obviously, what you had learned so far, what you've learned the month that you have been on this journey, and if you need to change the way you're taking action. And if any emotions are coming up about your progress or your lack of progress, you want to look into those. We also want to be doing something healing for ourselves during this time, even if that is triggering an emotion in your car that makes you cry when you put on a specific song. Very important to clear out emotional blockages that way. The next part is returning to the present, all right? Really take leadership back over your life after you've purged out those feelings. Return your focus back to the present moment. Be grateful, be in your body, experience something in your body. Really make time during this period to go and see some friends, go out on a date, have an experience that makes you feel authentically yourself. And of course, have a look at any emotions that come up during that time, and do they require you to do any introspection? The next phase, curious reflection. This is where we want to take a look at the progress you've made. Did it work? What didn't work? Forgive yourself for anywhere that you lost focus. Reassess where you are in the plan that you started at the start of the month. Be really curious, right? Ask questions, collect information, be social, make time to see your family, make time to nurture yourself, and write a list of the coming month that you need to do, that you want to achieve, and get to work. So that's a basic Selenic cycle. And each month would have a different energy focus. Now, if you have a natal chart, birth chart, that's the map of your psyche. And you can focus more directly on which certain parts of that line up with the cycle that you are using. Now, for example, if we are doing this health and habits cycle, now this could be taking place for you in the work space or in the family space, in the relationship space. Whichever space it's taking place, they are going to experience this desire to have new seeds planted. And that's within a daily habits and health focus. But depending on where that focus is, whether it's work or relationships or family, those are the parts of your life that will be affected by these changes, by your focus. And working with this constant level of self-introspection, these cycles, it really allows us to go deeper and to look further and to be more curious and less reactive in heightened emotional situations. And it's from this place of really truly understanding who we are that we get to be free and be ourselves. This process is not an easy process, but we are all being pushed forward into that space now. The energy of the world is asking us as a collective to move forward. If you would like any help with this, please book an appointment. You can come and see me at Oracle of Crystals in Malvern. We can do a video call appointment. I can show you your map. I can give you the cycle that you can be working with in order to best do your self-introspection and shadow work. I also run classes at Oracle of Crystals in Malvern where I can teach you how to do this yourself. So make sure you check that out. on my website and have a look at the sorts of appointments that we can do together if you would really like some help. Shadow work can sound like fluff, and self-introspection can sound like hard work. And if we have experienced a lot of trauma, we often feel like people are asking us to take the blame for that. But we are not taking blame. We are taking responsibility for wanting to live joyful lives. And to do that, we have to understand the shadow where we hide the meaning of these emotional reactions. And as we all individually take responsibility for these things, we can collectively understand each other. So remember, the experiences we have, the interactions, this world we live in is meaningless. And that is a gift because we get to decide what the meaning truly is. We can decide for it to be a positive meaning. And when we do self-introspection, we can understand that even in the most awful circumstances, we can choose the meaning to be a positive of something we can figure out about ourselves. Never be afraid to walk into your shadow. And as always, stay weird.